Before I get started, I'd like to ask you to please stick around until the very end because I have a very important announcement to make about updates for the channel, and I want to offer a very special thank you to you all for helping this channel reach an incredible milestone. Don't worry, it won't take long, and I promise it'll be worth your time. Well, I say it won't take very long, but I haven't recorded it yet, and you've probably seen how long I can go on for. Anyway, here we go. So I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy XIV recently, which, in case you didn't know, is an MMORPG, or massively multiplayer online role-playing game. I've never really been a big fan of this genre, partly because I end up feeling lost about what to do most of the time, but it's mostly because of what's commonly known as the grind. You see, in MMOs you essentially start out as no one. You have limited skills, you're dirt poor, you have weapons that can barely kill a fly, and some fairly basic and boring armor. If you spend enough time grinding through by playing the game, whether that's killing monsters, completing main quests and side quests, running through dungeons and raids, or even crafting items, you'll eventually notice that you've grown. You can defeat bigger and badder enemies, you have more opportunities available to you, but I would argue that most importantly, you get to look cool, thanks to fancier outfits and weapons. This is how my character looked at the start of the game, and here they are now at max level. In MMO games, grinding is part of their DNA, and the more you play it, the more you put effort into it, the more you grow. In more recent times, many people have adopted the idea of grinding in real life, believing that much like in a video game, the more you invest yourself into something, the more you'll get out of it. How a person grinds can vary. There are people who work excessive hours at their job without being asked to, people who take on gig jobs or side hustles such as rideshare or delivery apps like Uber, Postmates or DoorDash. There are also those who are trying to make a fresh start at work independently, such as making a startup company, or possibly being recruited by a friend to do some multi-level marketing, otherwise known as a pyramid scheme. Although there are those who have gone on to achieve success in these fields, the odds of being able to do the same for the majority of people are slim to none. Nevertheless, people are attracted to them because they offer the promise of success, that a small initial investment and a good amount of hard work will eventually pay off. As for the workaholics who labor for excessive hours and put in the additional effort, they've been told that time and time again that it will pay off. Not just by their employer, but by the wealthiest people in the world, who when asked about the secret of their success, love to claim that it was largely due to them going beyond the typical 40-hour work week, that because they were different from their peers, they were rewarded as such. These roads to success are all illusions, though. For every one person who succeeds, there are hundreds and thousands who will never see any rewards for their effort. They'll toil for years, and even though some may get to fatten their wallets a little bit, the riches that they believe are right in front of them are a mirage, created by the people who benefit from their efforts, and offer them meager rewards as encouragement to keep going. The sad reality of this culture of excessive work and get-rich-quick schemes is that it's ruining lives. It's making people ill both mentally and physically. It's stretching relationships to their limits, or in some cases, ending them. It's making people who are already experiencing financial hardships lose what little they already have, and it's asking them to take pride and wear a smile while their lives fall apart around them. Grinding, hustling, and excessive work has become toxic and all too common, especially among younger generations who are constantly exposed to the lifestyles of the rich and successful. Beyond the desire for that success though, what is it that's attracted people to need to dedicate massive amounts of time into working more than they need to? How have billionaires duped employees into giving them more labor for less? Why do people join multi-level marketing schemes and cryptocurrency, despite the fact that there's plenty of evidence that proves that it's not worth it? Let's look at the grind, the greatest scam of all time. First of all, I want to say thank you to this video's sponsor, Scentbird. We all like to smell nice, and we like being around people that do too. The problem is that perfumes and colognes are shockingly expensive, especially the good stuff. I like having a nice selection of fragrances available depending on my mood or even the time of year, so Scentbird is great because it means I get to choose without spending hundreds of dollars. Scentbird is a flexible subscription fragrance service that allows you to pick from over 600 brands. These range from big brands such as Prada, Gucci, and Versace, but they also have a selection from indie brands like Vince Camuto, The Harmonist, and Confessions of a Rebel. One of the best things about Scentbird is that you get to choose what you receive, so you know exactly what you're getting every single time. They have an excellent selection of masculine, feminine, and unisex fragrances. If you're not sure what you might like, good news, they've got a quiz for you that can help you figure out what you might like or fits your personality. Personally, my wife and I chose Be Delicious by DKNY, Neroli by Rag & Bone, and Eau de Cartier Concentré EDT by Cartier. I really like Neroli myself. It's strong but not overwhelming, with tones of citrus and jasmine. Just enough to stand out, but not so much as to offend the senses. My wife loved Be Delicious by DKNY, which is inspired by apple scents, so it has that nice crisp aroma that you'd expect. Plus, she really likes how the bottle looks too, so she'll probably be getting that one. They also come in these nice little containers where you can twist to reveal the sprayer, or just take the bottle out. Once you're done, twist it back, making it easy to travel with. Plus, it just looks really cool, like a pricey lipstick or something. Best of all, these aren't just your typical samplers like you get at the store. Scentbird gives you a 30-day supply of each bottle, which can vary depending on how you use it. Also, if you decide that you like a fragrance, you can buy it directly from them for the full bottle. And if you'd like, you can upgrade your subscription to 2 to 3 bottles a month. Scentbird already starts out at a great price of only $16 a month, but with the promo code Salari, you can get your first month for only $11, which, for what you get, is honestly great. So click on the link below in the description and the pinned comment and find out what scent is right for you. Then maybe you can finally throw away that nasty old can of Axe body spray. In the majority of workplaces in this day and age, working hard and long is basically an expectation, if not an obligation. You could argue that it was once the case where this kind of performance came with rewards, whether that's a salary increase or promotion to recognize your good work, but sadly, since employers can pretty much be the deciders on whether you work hard for whatever they give you or be unemployed and struggle to survive, your life is in their hands. So if they say you have to work this hard to keep your job, then you're gonna have to do it. Work can be exhausting for most of us, so much so that it can become difficult to maintain any kind of life outside of the confines of your workplace. Despite this though, there are those that believe that working shouldn't only be a requirement, but something that defines you as a person. That putting in that extra effort shouldn't just be for recognition, but to find pride and even identity in being someone who lives to work rather than the opposite. One thing I want to get out of the way early is that grinding isn't simply working hard in general or working to achieve something. Hard work can be good, especially if your end goal is to make something that you can be proud of. I work hard on these videos and I mostly do everything by myself, but I still don't let the act of working define who I am, which is a problem that is inherent to grinding. Hard work is one thing, but the grind has become a lifestyle for many. They're not just working is what makes them who they are, and this is an attitude that's glamorized among the members of the grinding community. On social media networks such as Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, you'll find no shortage of people who will happily promote grinding, brag about how many hours they've put into their job or jobs this week, offer tips on how to maximize your ability to work, many of which can be absolutely baffling to be honest with you, such as this tweet right here from Side Hustle King, who believes that receiving $50 every month for the rest of your life would be more worthwhile than receiving a single payment of $1 million, which, considering the average lifespan of someone in the US is about 79 years old, that would roughly amount to $47,400 or $600 a year. Even though Side Hustle King and many others like him agreed with the $50, claiming that he could make more money in investments, it doesn't take a genius to realize that you could afford far more by investing $1 million, or even letting it sit in a savings account and let the interest work its magic. At least he lives up to his name though by being a hustler, because for only $25 you can learn his secrets to success by signing up to the Circle of Wealth. I wouldn't trust this guy with my piggy bank, let alone any serious financial investments. There are no shortages of people like Side Hustle King though. They're all about the grind, working hard and being smart with money. They're the kind of people who work a 10-hour shift for $11 an hour and afterwards start riding Uber while obsessively checking their Robinhood portfolio between fares, while everyone else is spending their Sundays talking about how they wish the weekend didn't have to end and how they're dreading going back to work on Monday. The grinders are there on their socials saying TGIM or thank God it's Monday, and when the alarm rings in the morning, it's time to, as they put it, rise and grind.
I love that sound.
Working excessive hours is one thing, but that's not enough according to those on the grind. The time people would usually spend relaxing or recharging is considered an inconvenience which you should avoid if you truly want to maximize your potential. Sleep is an unfortunate necessity, so they cut down on it. Socializing is kept to a minimum, but they have a support network online encouraging them to keep doing what they're doing. Work breaks are out of the question, and stopping to prepare and eat a well-balanced meal at lunch or dinner is just a waste of time to them. Instead, they'll gladly chug a meal replacement drink such as Soylent or Huel, which claim to provide all the nutrients that you need for a proper meal. Personally, I think they taste like shit. Relaxation time with loved ones and good food are some of the things that can make life great, especially when you combine them together. Denying yourself of these things can understandably make you miserable, regardless of whether you think that you don't need them. And this is what people do when they're on the grind, believing that work is the only satisfaction you need from life, or that putting in the hours will eventually lead to a reward that will allow them an abundance of free time. But it's simply not true. It's also worth bearing in mind that pretty much everyone who is part of the grind is young. People in their 20s and 30s, and instead of enjoying their youth, they're squandering it. There may be those who genuinely find the grind rewarding. I can't possibly understand why myself, but I do know that if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't want to reach my 50s wondering if my 20s would have been better spent enjoying myself, even if by some miracle I was having those thoughts on a luxury yacht thanks to driving Uber Eats or participating in some multi-level marketing scheme. Speaking of which, for as long as people can remember, the idea of getting rich quick or becoming independently wealthy has been a dream which many aspire to. Not only that, but the notion of being your own boss has become an increasingly attractive prospect, given how many of us dislike the workplace, our bosses, or even a lack of control in our lives. As you're probably well aware though, getting to that point where you can stand on your own 2 feet and tell your boss that they can shove it as you walk triumphantly out of the door for the last time is incredibly hard. Setting up your own business or generating an income with your skill set can be costly and risky. Many businesses fail due to a multitude of reasons, and doing something like freelance work can be inconsistent due to how competitive it is. You could argue that the risk is worth the reward, and in some cases it is. The problem is that many people simply can't afford the risk, so when presented with something like a career in multi-level marketing, which involves a relatively low-cost investment with the potential of high returns, it's no surprising that so many people are quickly drawn in by the idea of easy-to-achieve financial independence. If you're unfortunate enough to still be on Facebook, you might be familiar with this scenario. You left high school years ago and suddenly you get a DM from someone who's on your friends list, but you barely spoke to them when you were a teenager, and the only thing that you really have in common is that you were in a few classes together. They catch up with you a bit, you catch up with them, and seemingly out of nowhere they offer you an opportunity. They tell you that they've been selling Herbalife weight loss supplements and how great it is to be working for themselves and to make their own hours. Then they ask you if you want in on this, but when you ask them how much they're making, they'll tell you it's something like, well, it's not about how much I've made, it's about how much I could potentially make. And as soon as you use the word pyramid scheme, they get defensive, tell you that you're being a bad friend by not supporting them, and maybe tell you to have fun being poor when they block you. How could they possibly have such trouble selling with such dazzling people skills? This isn't the only way in which MLMs recruit members though, and I use the word members because they're not employees. You may have seen the signs on the side of the road telling you that you could earn hundreds of thousands just by working from home. Classified ads like Craigslist, Facebook ads, or even actual job sites like Indeed. Although some of these methods absolutely reek of a scam, you'd be surprised how easy it is to believe that some of these are real job listings just because of how they're described. Let me share a little story with you. Shortly after I left university, I applied for a job in marketing, and nowhere in the description did they mention that it was a direct marketing job, another term used to make it look more glamorous. To anyone, it would look like a real job. When I was invited for the interview, which was in a real office, I spoke with the boss, a man in his 30s who wore fake tan on his face but failed to cover his neck, far too much deodorant, along with a hideous contrast collar button-down shirt. He also had a shocking amount of hair gel for someone who was beyond the legal drinking age. Everything about him screamed dodgy. He didn't ask me about my qualifications or anything, other than whether I've had some history in sales, which I had. Then he went on to tell me about how eventually I'd have my own opportunity to branch off from his business into my own. At this point, the alarm bells were ringing in my head and they were deafening, but I did decide to go along with it just to see what happened, out of morbid curiosity. He paired me up with another salesperson who was deep into this scam, and I mean deep. I forget his name, but for the sake of this, we'll call him Jimothy. We took the bus to a nearby neighborhood, and he told me that we were going to be going door to door selling subscriptions to a charity, and that for everyone he would sell, he would receive £10 in return. I spent 6 exhausting hours walking with him door to door just to watch them get slammed in his face over and over again, not making a single sale. Eventually we went to McDonald's for lunch, where he ordered one item off the £1 menu, then proceeded to explain how the business worked, and of course, it was a pyramid scheme. I explained to him why it's a scam, how it's rigged so that the people at the top of the pyramid are the only ones that benefit, and that he's wasting his time. He got a bit defensive, and I ended up asking how much he made last year, and he said only £2,000, a third of which went to his orange-faced boss. I then asked how long he spends each time he goes selling, and he replied 12 hours. To put that into perspective, if you were to work 5 days a week each year without extra time off like holidays, that's 253 days a year. Each shift being 12 hours makes it 3,036 hours a year. That means that this unfortunate person was earning a paltry 66 pence per hour, which is about 91 cents in current US dollars. It's not just the case that he was a bad salesperson either, and he was a nice guy, and in a real sales job he probably would have done very well, but the allure of putting in the hours and becoming independently wealthy was just too strong. I decided to leave him to finish his shift and went home on the train to return to the job search once again. I don't know if Jimothy ever figured things out or even if he achieved the success that he craved, but I do hope things turned out well for him. He was a nice guy. Many people fall into the same trap though. Sometimes it can be far worse. Many MLMs, especially those that sell physical products, require you to buy inventory to get started. In essence, the salespeople are actually the customer, because the money earned from selling things like starter kits is how the people higher up on the pyramid profit. If the seller earns enough money from selling these products, then it's basically a happy accident. And if they want to continue selling it, if by some miracle they sell their entire inventory, then they'll eventually have to buy more, earning minuscule amounts compared to the company that sold it to them. If they happen to never sell off their inventory, it doesn't matter to the company because they got their money out of the seller. I don't want to get too into the minute details of how many of these companies work, but if you're interested, then I highly recommend that you watch some of Illuminati's numerous videos exposing the inner workings of some of these companies, some of which have gone as far as violating child labor laws. 99% of people who join a multi-level marketing scheme lose money. There is endless amounts of rock-solid evidence that they simply do not work. Even when people earn money, it can be minuscule. It was found out that 50% of Herbalife sellers only earn around $370 each year, 10% earn $6,965, and less than 1% are legitimately successful, earning around $100K each year. Those odds are not worth the investment, and even if it is small, and even if you can afford to throw away a few $100s to get started, you could argue that you'd be better off playing the lottery each week. One thing that's worth noting though is that MLMs are particularly predatory towards women. Over 75% of all MLM salespeople are women, and many MLMs explicitly market towards women. There are various reasons for this, and no, none of them involve women being more gullible. They're just more vulnerable in these cases, and this is because opportunities for women are still lower than men, especially when it comes to setting up their own businesses and growth within the workplace. As I mentioned earlier, MLMs love to promote themselves as a way to be your own boss. I'm doing a lot of air quotes in this video. And in recent years, there have been ways in which women are encouraged to gain financial success through rising up the ranks in the workplace or becoming entrepreneurs or a girl boss. A title that's given to women who are celebrated for being in charge, wealthy, and when they're asked whether billionaires are a bad thing, they say that the only problem is that there aren't enough females who are billionaires. Personally, I can think of many other reasons why they're a problem. MLMs aggressively promote themselves as a way for women to get a low investment and quick way of getting your foot on the ladder to achieve wealth and independence. They'll claim that it's an empowering experience and that eventually they'll be able to empower other women into joining them. There may be more women moving up in the world in the traditional workplace, but the upper echelons are still male-dominated. So when offered the prospect of starting from scratch and not having to seek validation for your work from men who decide where you are on the corporate ladder, it's easy to see why women might want a piece of this. Even if women don't want to be rolling in riches, MLMs like to tell people that they're a good way of earning passive income too, a sort of a side hustle, something that you can do while working your day job, or if you're a homemaker and want to bring in that little extra. MLMs love to claim that your success is entirely dependent on how much effort you're willing to put into it, but the game is rigged from the start. They're designed from the ground up for you to lose money, and even if you gain a little in the process, the company still wins because it got far more money out of you by selling you products with high markups to sell off to others. If multi-level marketing isn't for you, then, well, there are other options available. Something that's become wildly popular in the past few years is gig work, specifically being a contractor for rideshare apps such as Uber, Lyft, or food delivery for Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Postmates. The creation of these services and apps like these are, on the surface, great for the consumer and an easy way for someone who uses them to earn a bit of money. With apps like Uber, if you're in a major city, then you're almost always less than 5 minutes away from a driver at any given time, unlike taxicab companies which have a limited fleet. With food delivery apps, you can order food from places who've never even offered delivery before. So if you want a 12-piece bucket of fried chicken from KFC at 11 p.m, then you can get it without leaving the house in exchange for a service fee. They're pretty great, and throughout the pandemic in particular, apps like Uber Eats and DoorDash became a blessing for those who were stuck inside, and to an extent, the businesses who had lost out on money by having to stop allowing people from dining at their restaurants. There are many people who do work for these services as means of earning a little extra cash each month. They might put aside a few hours each week to pick up a few passengers or do a few deliveries and call it a night when they're finished. Or they might even decide that they're not going to do it this week. A lot of people, however, treat these services like their full-time jobs. sometimes alongside their actual full-time jobs. Online contractor apps have become a huge part of grind culture. It's a way for people to maximize their income and has arguably taken on a form that's similar to that of a game that needs to be mastered. On YouTube, you'll find thousands of videos from people who claim to be experts when it comes to earning on these services, and they share that expertise with viewers who are eager to get the most possible returns from these apps. They'll talk about which locations are the best, the prime hours of the day, how to efficiently chain jobs together and lessen downtime, how to conduct yourself around passengers, what sort of amenities that you should put in your car like phone chargers, tissues, candies, and of course the obligatory tiny bottles of water. If you were to liken this to a game, it would be like finding the time of days where most players are on, or finding the best spots where you can farm for rare or valuable items. You could even say that kitting out your car with those amenities is kind of like equipping your character with the best armor for the task at hand. Part of the problem here is how many hours people can put into services like Uber or DoorDash. Working 9 hours at your regular job only to go to your car, open up an app and work for 4 or 5 hours more would be exhausting for anyone. The other part of this though that's problematic is 1, how little these companies offer in return for working for them, and 2, how people ignore this fact and accept it as just the nature of the business, especially for those who are deep into grind culture and finding their identity in working with those people in particular. Working for online contractors is just another way to justify their over-the-top work ethic. Uber, DoorDash, and pretty much all the other companies that are like them like to claim that by working for them, it's entirely possible that you could make a living wage off them. Make your own hours, be your own boss. And you know what you're thinking? Uh-oh, there are those words again. You sensing a pattern here by any chance? There are people who do indeed make a living off these services, but they're far and few between, and you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to work beyond the typical 40 hours a week. These services simply don't pay their drivers enough and take too large of a cut for themselves. There are a few factors to take into consideration. Take Uber, for example. They claim that they only take a 25% cut of each fare, but this isn't entirely true and the number can change depending on region and distance traveled. They also take the entire booking fee for themselves. You also have to consider the cost of maintaining your car, the fluctuating price of fuel, those customer amenities, car insurance, etc. But the big one is that in most countries, rideshare and delivery apps do not consider their drivers employees. They're self-employed contractors in their eyes, regardless of the hours they work, and therefore they're subject to paying much higher self-employment taxes, and in America, their own health insurance, which can be astronomically high. People who drive excessive hours can be at greater risk of heart disease due to a lack of mobility throughout the day, so they could also be subject to higher premiums. Despite all this though, the grinders just say that you've got to keep grinding. It's part of the game, and if you don't put in the effort required, then it's on you if you start to struggle by surviving off your day job. And when they want to show off what a great work ethic they've got and how smart they are with money, they'll usually drop this old chestnut. I guess I'm just built different, which is kind of a backhanded way of saying, I guess I'm better than you. There are a lot of wealthy people in the world right now. In fact, there are approximately 51,882,000 people who have earned over $1 million, and there are 2,755 billionaires, with more being added to the list each year. Many people look to the wealthy as inspirational figures. They're the ones who managed to work hard enough to break free from financial woes and took command over their lives. We also live in a time where the idea of the millionaire or billionaire has changed. They're not just some stuffy 50-year-old CEO of a company that rarely speaks to the public. They've become public figures themselves who share their lives with the world, portraying themselves as regular people, doing regular things and having fun.
Smoke a brisket for like 12 hours. You smoke lemon chicken, smoke salmon, you'll love it.
They're a lifestyle, and our exposure to this lifestyle has made them more aspirational than they've ever been before. Now that we have more contact with these wealthy figures, the one question that they're asked time and time again is, how did you do it? How did you manage to earn your riches? And even though the answer most of the time should be that they were born into intense privilege and given a large financial safety net so that even if they did fail, then they could comfortably recover and try over and over again, they always say this: I worked hard and I worked long hours, which, as many can confirm, is simply not true. People love a good rags to riches story, but few of these people ever started out in rags. If anything, they started out wearing Armani and eventually moved up to wearing Louis Vuitton. This story has been used not only to cover up the truth behind the successes of the wealthy, but to inspire those who work regular hard jobs and getting them to work harder to acquire their own riches. The thing is, at the end of the day though, even though you may have some extra money to take home with you when you get your paycheck, the only person that's really benefited from your work is your boss. They sold you a lie. They put you in a crappy job, told you that if you want out, then you have to work longer and harder, and profited from it as well. Because at the end of the day, the boss gets $1, you get a dime. People like Elon Musk are especially guilty of this excessive work mentality, claiming that no one changed the world working 40 hours a week. He also loves to tout his own rags to riches story, even though it's very well documented that his parents were exceedingly rich before and after they illegally purchased an emerald mine in South Africa during apartheid when he was a child. His father, Elon Musk, even claims that they had so much money that they couldn't close the door to the safe. Elon claims that he didn't reap any benefits from this, but given his history of lying to save face and just being a dog fart of a human being in general, I wouldn't place much value on that claim. Also, fun little, completely unrelated fact for you. A couple of years ago, Elon's dad, Elon Musk, was 72 at the time and had a child with a 30-year-old woman named Jana. Last name, I cannot pronounce that. I'm not even going to try. Now, while the age discrepancy alone is enough to raise a few eyebrows, what's more disturbing is the fact that Jana is Errol's stepdaughter, whom he raised since the age of 4 years old. Pretty gross, right? At least Elon had a shred of decency to condemn this, so kudos to him for that, I guess. The point is though, is that working long hours has become far too normalized in the modern work environment, whether it's employers demanding or subtly insisting that you go beyond the typical 40 hours a week, or being encouraged by billionaires and those that worship them to stretch yourself beyond your limits, to forego the things in life that give you pleasure in exchange for financial returns. It is a lie designed to exploit you. Younger generations are already working harder than all the others that came before us, and still our bosses demand more for the alluring yet erroneous promise of success. As this becomes normalized, it makes work harder for those who are incapable or unable to put those excessive hours into it, because it means that if you can't do it, then someone else will. And if working something like 60 hours a week is normal, then the less likely they are to complain about it. In China, there's a term 996, which refers to working from 9 AM to 9 PM 6 days a week. And within industries like tech, it's become the norm, that it's the cost that you have to pay to work in a field which pays so well. And even though it's considered normal, it's still slowly killing people and draining them of their will to live. You'll see similar cases in the West as well, such as game development studios, having their employees work anywhere up to 100 hours a week in order to ship their products on time for the release date. I myself worked a job where 60-hour weeks were common. During the winters, I'd go into work when it was dark out and leave when it was still dark. If I wasn't eating takeout at work, then I got home every night, I'd eat an easy-to-make dinner that's less than nutritious, sit in front of the TV, browse the internet, and maybe play a video game, then eventually go to sleep, just to wake up the next morning and repeat the cycle. One morning I woke up and had breakfast, but found that I couldn't keep my food down. I got an emergency appointment at the doctor, which I had to because my work wouldn't allow people to call out sick unless they had a doctor's note. After speaking to them for a few moments, they had me fill out the sheet to rank yourself on the scales for generalized anxiety disorder. For every single answer, I found myself checking 5 out of 5, not realizing how bad things had become, and I broke down in tears believing that I might be broken, and I'm partly to blame for allowing myself to work so much, that I was foolish enough to believe my bosses when they told me that I had a chance to grow in the company. I took time off and eventually ended up leaving. I found out that my boss actually didn't care about what I was going through. They just wanted to know if they needed to fill my seat. I don't think that I've ever truly recovered from that horrible experience, and I probably never will. It changed how I saw the working world, made me think that I could never trust an employer again, no matter how caring they may seem, and it breaks my heart to see others fall into this same trap over and over again. It's also why I'm extremely happy doing what I do now. It's still stressful and YouTube is a terrible boss, but if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be able to try and convince people that there's better ways of doing things. I may not have all the answers for this, but at the very least, I hope that I can let people know that this is wrong and we could do so much better than giving our lives away to heartless employers, get-rich-quick schemes, or even apps. This channel reached 100,000 subscribers recently, and I still can't believe it. I thought this moment would be years away from now, if ever at all, but it happened. Before this, I was completely uncertain about my future. I simply didn't know what I wanted to do in my life, and I was afraid that I would go through the rest of it working unsatisfying jobs, trying to convince myself that so long as I'm earning money, my happiness doesn't matter, but it does. A lot. I recognize that, in a way, what I did to get to this point is similar to the people that grind, join MLMs, or work dozens of hours for rideshare apps. I was carrying on in the hopes that it would eventually work out. Although I can say I'm proud of what I make, that I put in the hours to make something of good quality so that people will recognize the effort, I'm also under no illusion that this has nothing to do with luck, and that by some miracle the YouTube algorithm happened to bless me with views. I could have put hundreds of hours into these videos and barely reached 100 views on each one. In fact, for about the first year of doing videos, that's what I was getting. There are so many great creators on YouTube who will never get the attention or praise that they deserve, because it's just the nature of the platform, and to an extent, it's the nature of work. If you're someone who's been watching my videos for a while now, or supports me on Patreon, or even watching something for the first time, I sincerely want to thank you for helping me get to this point where what I do finally feels real, and to help me feel that for the first time in a very long time, I finally have a future to speak of, that perhaps one day my wife can finally quit her job and work alongside me. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. I mean that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't work hard. Like they say, hard work can be its own reward, but you should do it for the right reasons. If you get joy simply from working, then that's great. But the more we cling to this notion that excessive hard work will in due course bestow you with the success that you crave, the more we'll be telling the billionaires, the MLMs, the app developers, etc., that it's fine to work people to the bone, and it's fine to offer them the illusion that their riches are just around the corner if they keep pushing themselves that little bit more. It's no surprise that people are desperate to escape the drudgery of working for a boss, given how awful the work environment has become. But instead of trying to appease the people who are taking so much from us by doing more for them, we should be telling them that this isn't working, that we deserve our fair share of our work while having time to enjoy our fleeting lives. How much of yourself you're willing to give to work depends on who you are, but it's up to all of us to demand that our work gives something back in return, to show that we have value, whether that's recognition, financial security, or, more importantly, time. Well, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. It really does help in getting this video more exposure, and I would always appreciate that. I also want to thank the lovely patrons that you see scrolling down here right now. These people all contributed just a little bit each month, and I really appreciate that. I'd also like to give a special shout out to all of my patrons that donate $5 or more each month, and that goes to Jay, Jordan Christa, Idaho Judd, Matthew Torres, Enrique Gutierrez, Eric Espinoza, Nathan Ferrin, Murger Fashionable, Alina, hello, it's Leo, hello, Jay's Reviews, Ratums, Mandy Sprector, Games, Martina, Sander Panda, Ashton the Platypus, CB Hart, Kevin Korber, Logan Roan, Sharfay, Nostracon, Lexi Weiss, Mariam, Mickey Buonadonna, Floof Pants, Tamara, Marius Stubberud, Your Sweet Pea, Catherine, and finally Steve Marr. Thank you very much. Your support really does mean a lot to me, and if you do wish to support me and join these wonderful people on this list, you can do so at patreon.com/Salari. Any amount goes a very long way in keeping this channel running, whether it's $1 or more. I appreciate it nonetheless. I also answer the Patreon question of the month, which this time comes from Sharfay. Sharfay asks, how do you balance free time and content creation? Also, hi. I'm probably pretty bad at it, to be honest with you. I really need to come up with a more ironclad schedule on how I do things. But usually once I finish a video, I'll take a few days off, and during that time, I'll still be like coming up with ideas for the next thing. But while I'm making a video, I'm just trying to work night and day while coming up with some breaks in between it. So probably not healthy, but I still need to work on it more. All things considered, I'm relatively new to this, but thank you. Good question. So big announcement that I've got to make. So as I said recently, I hit 100,000 subscribers, which is a tremendous milestone that I never thought that I would reach. And that's all thanks to you. But one thing that I have always been mindful of is boosting other creators, whether that's creators on YouTube, whether it's musicians, artists, whatever it might be. Boosting can make a huge difference in people's career. Now, I'm not huge by any means, but I still have a platform, and I would still like to use that to help elevate other voices, especially if those be people of color, LGBTQI, whatever it might be. If you would like to be boosted in some kind of way, every single video from now on, I am going to promote one or two creators that I think are worth putting out there for the world to see, because it can make a difference. So from here on out, like I said, I'm going to be boosting other people just to try and get them going a little bit, because it does matter. I got boosted myself, and it made a big difference. So if you wish to have something promoted by this channel, then I ask you to send an email, and please just one email, to salarivideo@gmail.com, my business email. Provide some of your work, tell me about yourself, give me your pronouns and everything, and let me know why you want to be promoted. And if I look over it and I like it, and I think it's worth boosting, then absolutely I'll do it. I'll have to compile a list over time, and I'll try and catch up with it if there's too many. But yeah, I want to put other people's voices out there other than my own, because I personally believe that a lot more channels should be doing something like this, and I want to hold myself to that standard at the very least. You can also DM me on Twitter with your details as well. My handle is @SalariTV. But yeah, reach out to me. Let me know what you want to do, and I'll be happy to do it. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching once again. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for helping me reach 100k subscribers. I still haven't come to terms with it yet, to be honest with you. And I have that nice little check mark next to my name, which is great. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.